Hey church, today we're in 1 Peter chapter 4. This is a chapter that I do not consider to be a very feel-good type chapter. Matter of fact, it talks about something as Christians we don't like to talk about very often, which is suffering. And Peter even goes a step further and says that we're to rejoice in our suffering, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? Well, I think about rejoicing in things that I desire to happen. Wearing my Atlanta Braves hat today, been a Braves fan my whole life. And when they won the World Series this year, that was something that I wanted to happen. So therefore, I rejoiced in that. And how about for you this time of year? Maybe you got a promotion or a bonus check, something you wanted to happen. You rejoiced. A very much more serious level for us at our house. We prayed for our kids to know Christ and longed for that to happen. And when each one of them did, we rejoiced in that. But that's something we wanted to happen. But yet here we're talking about rejoicing in suffering. And Peter makes it clear that this suffering, the reason we suffer is because Christ himself suffered. And when our life looks like Jesus, like when our motives and our thoughts, our desires, our will lines up with his, is when we face that suffering. It doesn't mean we're living a perfect life. We're still going to sin, but we're doing everything we can to live like Jesus and not of the world. That is when we begin to face suffering. Peter gives this great example that's true today. He talks about someone whose life was living in debauchery and sin, and they've since come out of that, and the people that they were associated with can't understand that. And so he says that they heap abuse on them. And that might be your testimony, thinking about back before knowing Christ, you were running with people and doing things you knew were not of the Lord, but they were of the world. And when you came out of those things, those people could not understand why you would change, what happened in your life. And the only thing they know to do is to heap insults at you. Or maybe you've been caught up in a sin as a Christian and been convicted, and you've come out of that and made a stand for Christ, and people just want to make fun or just plain out be mean to you because they can't understand why anyone would want to live a life that's different than the world. Well, the truth is we should be living that life that's different than the world. And Peter gives us these examples of how to live that life. It's this right here. We should be clear-minded, self-controlled so that we can pray. We should love each other deeply, and this love covers a multitude of sins. We should offer hospitality without grumbling. We should use the gifts God given us to serve others. We should speak with God's words. Ultimately, we should be servants, just as Jesus came to serve. And this thing called suffering is not an if thing, it's a when thing. So when we're living this life, we will have suffering. And this is what he says about it, though. Back to the rejoicing thing. He says, but rejoice that you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. And he even goes further to say, however, if you suffer as a Christian, do not be ashamed, but praise God that you bear my name. So why should we rejoice? Why should we praise God in suffering? And I think it's this reason right here. When we receive those insults, when we face persecution and suffering, it's because our life does look different. And that should encourage you and encourage me that we're living differently than the world, that God is shining through us, and that people are seeing a difference in our life. So today may be the day that you face that suffering. Maybe it's not, but it's coming if it hasn't already, and it probably will come again. But be encouraged that when you face the suffering, that you are bearing the name of the one who suffered for you, who died for you. And there's no amount of suffering that's not worth that, knowing that we belong to the King of Kings. So be encouraged, live for Jesus, and have a great day.